Have you noticed how every new grind zone in BDO kind of feels the same? You go in, defeat a few waves, the mobs spawn around you, and that's it. It's clean, controlled, and somehow completely lifeless. PvE in BDO has been changing, and not everyone's happy about it. Every new grind zone seems to follow the same pattern: tightly packed areas, wave-based spawns, and no real need to move around. Players have started calling these places tower spots, and they've quietly become the blueprint for modern PvE. But there's more to this shift than just a new grind zone format. So let's start by breaking down what tower spots actually are, and why Pearl Abyss keeps making them. Tower spots in BDO are PvE grind zones where mobs spawn in waves around a fixed point, usually a structure, pillar, or totem. Most players call them tower spots now, but the community's used quite a few names, including towers, pillars, and totems, but they all refer to the same idea. Personally, I've always called them totem spots, so that's what I'll be using here. In these totem spots, you don't have to pull or rotate between packs. The game basically delivers the mobs to you. This is very different from open world grind zones, where enemies are scattered across a field and players create their own rotations, choosing whatever order or pattern they want to defeat the mobs in. At first, totem spots were a fun little change of pace. Places like Stars End Pillars or Underground Gyfin showed that totem spots could have a place in BDO. However, totem spots really started to take off with the Dehkia's Lantern mechanic, a system that let players upgrade old spots, especially ones tied to treasure or rare drops. It was a great idea at first, breathing life back into those forgotten zones. But, of course, it came with a catch. Every area touched by the lantern had to function as a totem spot. The upgraded mobs spawned around the lantern itself, meaning players were locked to a single point. PA relied on the Dehkia Lantern mechanic for quite a while, even adding Lantern 2 versions for certain areas. And after months of that cycle, players began to feel like every new update was guaranteed to add yet another totem spot. That repetition built today's fatigue towards totem spots. It's not that totem spots are inherently bad, it's that players have watched the same design spread across nearly every PvE zone. And now, even new areas that aren't tied to the Dehkia Lantern are starting to feel the same. More static, less dynamic, with some even being actual totem spots. All of this has players wondering if this is the new design direction for PvE and BDO, a shift away from the open world, sandbox feel that once defined BDO. But before we talk about the issues, we need to look at why PA continues to release more and more totem-style grind zones. Something about the success of the lantern system, or maybe the design of those older totem spots, clearly inspired PA to keep moving in this direction. In my opinion, it's all part of a larger goal: controlling volatility in PvE rewards. PA isn't trying to reduce the total silver income, we're actually seeing some of the highest silver per hour ever. They're really trying to reduce the variance between players grinding the same area. This direction really started with the big PvE AP rework, where players suddenly gained a lot of bonus monster AP scaling from their sheet AP. We also got monster AP caps, and together these changes were clearly meant to normalize silver output across the player base. But for a short period right after the patch, volatility really increased instead. Certain older zones, like Hex Sanctuary, produced absurdly high silver per hour, in some cases beating more endgame areas. PA claimed it was an HP bug, but we're not really sure what the reason was. However, they quickly patched those spots, which only reinforces the point that they're actively watching PvE income data and moving fast to close any gaps that create large silver discrepancies. Since then, we've seen a consistent pattern. Mechanical changes like AP caps, along design changes like totem spots, all built to control how much silver a player can earn for their gear level. Totem spots make that control a little bit easier. PA can dictate how long mobs take to respawn, how many appear per wave, and how many total kills are possible per hour. Players can't use movement, pulling, or rotation tricks to extend their grind. No pulling multiple packs, no creative repositioning means no extra mobs per hour. Everyone's capped at the same respawn and mobs defeated, regardless of how well they play. And that's where the real trade-off begins. Totem spots remove many of the mechanics that used to reward player skill. When those mechanics disappear, so does the ability for better players to be rewarded with more silver per hour. In the end, everything is controlled and skill expression disappears. And that brings us to the core question of this video. Are totem spots themselves really the issue, or is the real problem the gradual removal of game mechanics that allow players to show and be rewarded for their skill? Because we've seen before that totem spots can actually be fun when they're built around strong mechanics. Underground Gyphon is a perfect example, and even dehkia 2 Oloons generally received positive feedback. They weren't flawless in any means, but both had designs that kept players engaged rather than just present. Take Underground Gyphon for instance. At its core, it's a textbook totem spot, but it layered in several mechanics that made the grinding there feel active. You needed to activate and defeat bosses in a specific order. Not exactly difficult since the order was shown on screen, but it added a bit of structure and interactiveness to the grind. When despair mobs spawned, you needed to shift from single target boss damage to area of effect clears to keep that trash count high and boost your silver per hour. Occasionally, a larger boss, the Butcher, appeared, and defeating it granted a short buff that massively increased your damage to regular bosses. Players quickly discovered creative ways to extend that buff, leashing certain bosses to specific spots so the Butcher effect wouldn't be overwritten, letting them burst through more than one boss with that buff and increase their overall silver per hour. That's the kind of design that rewards skill, awareness, and experimentation. Essentially, totem spots by design remove some of the mechanics that naturally test players' skill, but if you add them back in, they can absolutely be fun. So clearly, totem spots aren't the real problem. The real issue is when those kinds of mechanics, the systems that let players express and leverage their skills, are stripped away. Without them, every grind zone starts to feel the same no matter how it's structured. So, to really understand why BDO's PvE starts to feel the way it does, we have to look at mechanics and what happens when they're stripped away. Remember that old Mario meme? Both clips show the exact same game, the same level, and even the same sequence. One is basically titled Best Game Ever and the other Most Boring Game. The only difference is that on one side, the player is interacting with mechanics, using momentum, timing, and jumps to move forward as fast as possible. On the other one, they're just holding W and moving forward. It's a perfect way to show how mechanics transform a game from something passive into something exciting. They're the bridge between player skill and player reward, and that's exactly what's disappearing from modern BDO PvE design. So in very basic game design terms, mechanics are the rules, and dynamics are how players interact with them. But not all mechanics are good ones. Boring mechanics create boring dynamics. Take one of BDO's newest endgame spots, Zephyros Castle. On paper, it has mechanics, bosses, phases, timed spawns, but in practice, the main mechanic is that after you defeat a boss, the surrounding mobs automatically die and your pets automatically pick up the loot. That may sound convenient until you realize it creates the most boring dynamics imaginable. You finish the boss, and then you just sit there. For a couple of minutes, your job is to do literally nothing. When you stack that on top of the totem format, already a static single point grind, it turns what should be one of BDO's flashiest, most intense PvE experience into something that looks completely lifeless. You're not rewarded for efficiency, timing, or awareness. The game simply pays you for being there. And that problem goes beyond Zephyros. In essence, mechanics that force you to play a certain way, without any room for optimization or skill expression, are just boring. A lot of the Edania zones do reuse the Gyphon style defeat mobs in a specific order mechanic, but they don't layer anything interesting on top of it. That kill order exists purely to prevent AFK botting, not to give players something to master. In other Idania spots, mechanics feel more like chores, something you have to do to avoid taking damage or breaking the zone, rather than tools to test skill or efficiency. And this isn't just a player experience problem, it's a viewer problem too. Watching a veteran player run through a grind zone should look impressive. Viewers should see precise movement, clean cancels, and fast pulls. Newer players should be able to pick up some tricks just by watching. But with these grind zones that lack mechanics, even veteran players don't look any different from AFK bots. Viewers tuning in to see high-level combat just see players standing still, waiting for loot to appear. When even veterans look the same, it's not just about visuals, it's about game design. That visual sameness isn't an accident, it's a direct representation of the systems that PA has built. Most of the new PvE areas aren't designed to challenge players, they're designed to control outcomes. By trying to make every player earn roughly the same silver per hour at the same gear level, PA has flattened not just the economy, but the skill curve itself. And that mindset, designing for consistency instead of mastery, leads into one of BDO's strangest ironies. Ironically, this design has made the term toteming come full circle. Back in the day, toteming referred to players using macros or some sort of automation to loop their skills while standing near a totem, farming silver while technically AFK. It was obviously never intended gameplay, and it was never really that efficient, but it let players act like bots while they were away from their computers. Fast forward to now, and modern grind zones are doing almost the exact same thing, except it's by design. Players are effectively being forced to play like bots. One Awakening Witch even told me that in-game, the anti-AFK mechanic, the Spook, spawned on them mid-grind. Not because they were idle, but because the grind zone and their class didn't require any movement at all. The game literally thought that they weren't even playing. That's when you know something is wrong. Mechanics should let players express skill, turning knowledge, timing, and awareness into better results. That's what keeps games fun, and that's what BDO's PvE used to do so well. Right now, PA's trying so hard to control outcomes that they've started controlling player expression. The grind might be balanced, but it's lost its meaning. Whether you're a veteran optimizing every animation cancel or someone paying half attention, the outcome ends up the exact same. So, now that we know the issue, what can PA do to fix this? For the future of BDO, PA has to be very careful. They clearly have a set vision for their game, one that prioritizes balance and control, but they can't let that vision blind them from what makes a game fun. Wanting to control PvE reward volatility is fine in theory, but when that control removes the mechanics that reward players' skill, the result is a game that feels dull and lifeless. Players need the opportunity to express their skill and be rewarded for it. I'm not saying that every grind zone needs to be some complex puzzle or require players to solve a Rubik's Cube every 10 seconds to earn silver, but there should be some interesting mechanics that keep players looking forward to grinding, systems that reward awareness, creativity, and efficiency. Players shouldn't need a 1-hour guide to understand a new zone, but a good tips and tricks video should still teach them something meaningful. Of course, there's still a place for more relaxed grind zones, the ones where you can throw on a movie or play some TFT on the side while holding down one button, but that player shouldn't be the default audience every new spot is designed around. We know PA is capable of building fun and engaging zones. All versions of Balloons, or totem spots like Underground Gyfin, and even open world spots like Pig Cave show that good mechanics can coexist with good structure. Within the totem framework itself, things like multiplayer coordination, mob poolings, or kill order mechanics can turn repetition into something rewarding. Group grinding is something we'll talk about more in the future, but it's a great example of how you can inject mechanics into PvE to make it fun again. And beyond that, PA can and should still explore true open world grind zones. At the end of the day, players should feel excited to grind, not like it's something they're forced to do. Good mechanics are what makes PvE worth playing. They're what turns effort into mastery and mastery into reward. That's what BDO used to do so well, and that's what it needs to rediscover. But that's just my opinion. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time.